Hello, welcome to our Fireside Chat Fridays at Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. We are ready to go live shortly. We will just bring our guest on and buckle up. We have a very interesting conversation planned today. As always, you'll be able to type in your comments and questions below. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Jonathan Granoff. He has a prolific career in nuclear disarmament, and we will just be going live shortly. We are almost ready to start. Welcome again to all of our viewers today. Feel free to share your comments and questions in the chat. Welcome, Mr. Granoff.
Cool.
Welcome. I'm just going to do a very short introduction and then we'll just dive right in if that's okay.
Sure.
So greetings again to all of our viewers. My name is Haneen. I'm representing Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Voices is an interfaith and intercultural group advocating for nuclear abolition from an intergenerational, ethical, and faith-based perspective. Our leaders, one of whom is with us today, span from youth leaders to seasoned diplomats and politicians. We invite you to join us today and share these moments during Fireside Chat Fridays as we talk about this issue and our role with different leaders and thinkers who are shaping and changing the nuclear abolition landscape. We invite you to ask questions and share comments as we sort of go behind the scenes on the journeys of folks who are usually on high-level panels, and this is an opportunity for us to engage with them a little bit more personally. This video will be available for viewing after the broadcast as well, so feel free to tune in then if you can't watch the whole recording now. So we now turn to our guest, Mr. Jonathan Granoff. I'd just like to introduce him for a moment. He is the representative to the United Nations of the World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize laureates. He is the senior advisor to the Committee on National Security of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association, and the recipient of its Lifetime Achievement Award last year. He is a Nobel Peace Prize nominee himself and president of the Global Security Institute, which has on its board of advisors well-known folks in the nuclear disarmament landscape, such as Mikhail Gorbachev and Jane Goodall. And he is a longtime advocate for a world free of nuclear weapons and one of the founding leaders of Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. Mr. Granoff, thank you for taking time to talk to us today. I will just jump right in. My first question to you is from this phenomenal 30,000-foot view that you have with these different hats that you wear within this field. And as we talk about nuclear abolition, with the new government in the U.S., with a rapidly changing landscape, what, in your view, is the single most important thing, or the single most important action that needs to be taken in this moment?
A redefinition of the way in which the modern state pursues security for its citizens. Presently, the world spends around $1.9 trillion a year in the pursuit of security through high technical weaponry. Weapons such as nuclear weapons are a paradox of this. They're sort of the end of the road, because the more we perfect the weapon, the less security we obtain. And in the, behind the scenes are nuclear weapons are 1930s physics and 1940s technology. We're on the verge of quantum computing, biotechnology that will allow changing the very biology of multiple species. Electromagnetic weapons, nanotechnology weaponry. all kinds of horrific ways in which we could destroy ourselves. And what are we actually protecting? Are we actually protecting people? Do these weapons provide the security in people's daily lives? I would propose that we're pursuing security. It's as if we're driving on a road that was designed for horses and buggies, but we're driving Maseratis. The road that was created in the 17th century of the modern state to stop the carnage of the Christian community in Europe, destroying each other over whose definition of Jesus' love was preferred. Catholics and Protestants slaughtering each other in the millions. And out of that, in the 1640s, we created the modern state. Now that's the focus of security, is the state. And our security paradigms are protecting borders from invasion. But what are we really faced with as threats that people are faced with? Pandemics. There's no passports for pandemics. Viruses don't recognize gender, race, religion, or nationality. We can't possibly survive in a vaccine apartheid world. Science, art, finance, commerce, communication, transportation, and any reasonable person understands we're part of one planet that's biologically interconnected. All of these weapons can't do anything to protect us from our impact on the climate of the planet, which is increasing desertification and the destruction of the topsoil. 50 to 70% of our oxygen comes from phytoplankton in the oceans. Our breathing is a gift from this single-cell organism that depends on the balance of acidic and alkaline in the oceans. And intelligent people from your age and younger all over the world understand this. They understand that the quest for cooperation, they understand that the shirt that you're wearing was probably a multinational endeavor, finance in one country, cotton in another, nylon in another, a factory in another, transportation under a flag of another, that the world is so small now. And yet, we are still spending literally trillions of dollars modernizing weapons of mass destruction. I think the pandemic, the climate, the realization of the fallacy of racial and national prejudice has caused many people to look over the precipice and say, God, we can't keep going the same way. We have to change, and we need to demand of our political leaders that they answer our questions. What are you doing to protect our climate? What are you doing to eliminate gross inequities of wealth and well-being? What are you doing to protect our health? What are you doing to get rid of the barrier to cooperation that all this weaponry and madness of killing represents? That, I think, is the challenge across the board. And nuclear weapons represent, to me, the most dysfunctional method of human communication ever invented, the apex of ignorance. The idea that in order to protect an invention of human beings like you and me, that other human beings would be willing to end the future of any further souls coming into this magnificent, wondrous web of life and learning whatever lessons the mysterious creator of life itself is bestowing on them. That we would have the arrogance, to spend so much intellectual capacity, passion, wealth, and time in producing these things, rather than finding ways to live together. So I think that's the most important thing for people in whatever endeavor they're doing, to change the lens, to change the focus, to become realistic. You know, we're in a unique moment in history in which the spiritual admonition of the wise since time immemorial to see the human family as one has really now become a practical necessity.
Wow.
Does that make sense to you, or am I just?
It's no, it's blowing my mind, and I'm sure our you know it's providing a lot of food for thought for our listeners as well. It really, Mr. Granoff, it blows my mind how you say that, how you speak of these weapons also as a mode of communication between you know, either rival states, or, you know, between us and the other, and however we define that. I feel there's it's such a strong message that's going across, and you know, thank you for putting it like that. And that kind of like leads me to the next question. Go ahead.
Let's strip away the veneer of states. This is mostly men. It's people talking to one another, who first identify themselves as not their humanity, but their nation. And as soon as you change that focus, and as Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell said in their fabulous statement on the subject, which I commend to anybody's attention, just Google Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell statement on nuclear weapons. They go through an analysis of what modern science and technology could do to us. But it ends and says, remember your humanity. I mean, it's that. So if you strip away the veneer of the state and just look at it as human beings in a room talking. I mean, one of the analogies that with nuclear weapons, it's as if you have nine men in a basement, knee deep in gasoline, each of them holding a box of matches, and saying, "I'll decide when I'm going to put the matches on the gasoline." This shouldn't be a decision for anybody. Mm-hmm. This is just not something, and it's not, this capacity of destroying the future takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. Just like it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy and social organization and financial organization and creating passions to buy and purchase things. It takes a lot of organization to melt the polar ice cap. If 100 years ago someone had said, we're going to organize the way we heat our homes and move our bodies around in such a manner that we're going to melt the polar ice cap and change the very biological systems of the planet Earth, so you would have been laughed at. But we've done it, and we haven't made the switch in the financial and cultural engine that is continuing to do this. I believe we certainly have a leader in the United States now who's committed to that, but we haven't changed our financial institutions or of running our economy based on perpetual consumption and the creation of garbage. I mean, 500 years ago, there was no such thing as garbage. There was no garbage. In nature, there's no garbage. Everything is cyclical. We've created this phenomenon, like with plastics. It's garbage. We make it, and it just stays there. So I think we need to really step back and become realistic. What is modern human beings able to do? And it's not. There's a feminist critique of this. I don't think that's the right way of looking at it. I think it's a deeply I hate to use a word that's not readily used, but epistemological, which is how do we find what's real to define purpose of our human life? And we've taken on an enormous fascination with science and technology, which are tools for living rather than finding out the meaning of life. And we need to, listen to the whys of the founders of our religions, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Socrates, the whys of humanity, who all talk about the pursuit of virtue, love, and compassion, and put that first.
Thank you for this offering, and I'm just so privileged to be able to share this with this conversation with folks who might tune in to listen and ponder over this in coming days and weeks. I'm wondering, Mr. Granoff, as a lot of the folks who are listening will be young people who we're who will be at the receiving end of this baton of leadership on on nuclear issues in coming decades. I wonder, and you've talked to about some of this already, but it just in terms of some discrete actions or some ways that as young people and individuals, what can we do?
Well, short-term policies, that's a whole different discipline. I mean, people get involved in caring about the environment first by in their neighborhood, feel something about the climate by cleaning up the litter. It's just an illusion, but they get involved. There isn't any such thing for nuclear weapons. States make them. And it is somewhat arcane, but it's very important. So I think the most important thing is for every young person to demand political leaders a plan to get rid of them. Say, what's your plan? I'm not an expert. What's your plan? And then seek out leaders who can articulate a plan to move us toward a nuclear weapons-free world. There are commitments that have been made, so we can now drill into this subject if you want to. I mean, it's a subject that's not enticing and exciting. You deal with the tools in which states talk to one another. That's law and treaties and policies. So, risking putting people to become bored and lose attention, I'll address some of the policies that make sense. One, we should, in the United States, ratify the treaty banning any further testing of nuclear weapons. We have promised to do this under a treaty called the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which every country but 4 in the whole world are members of, in which the states with nuclear weapons promised that they would negotiate the elimination of nuclear weapons in exchange for the other over 180 states in the world saying we won't have them. And so, but there's steps to get there. Just jumping to getting rid of them and prohibiting them, they're not going to do that. They need to change the political environment and the security environment. So the steps that they've committed to under that treaty involve ending any further nuclear testing, ending the production of material, nuclear weapons capable fissile materials, any further materials, have an inventory of all of the nuclear materials on the planet and safeguard it with the same intensity we safeguard gold in Fort Knox. These are things that we know how to do, and the leaders of the world know how to do this, and this improves everybody's security. Strengthening the verification systems, the International Atomic Energy Agency's budget needs to be tenfold of what it is. It's a mere pittance of the amount of money we spend making pits, these about the size of a grapefruit, that can blow up a city. We need to lower the operational status of the weapons, take the delivery system and the weapon and decouple them so that they're not on hair trigger alert. So we're not having leaders have 6-10 minutes to decide whether a blip on a computer screen is a mistake or an actual attack. Lower the whole theory, lower the salience of the weapons in the theoretical framework of how we pursue security. And then create a regular meetings with the goal in mind at the highest levels of state to get out of the conundrum that we've painted ourselves to, in which we're willing to risk everything in the pursuit of security. I have spoken to leaders in Russia, youth leaders, and I asked them, would any of you want to destroy New York City, or do you want to visit? And they laugh. Of course I want to destroy New York City. And you talk to the kids in New York City, does anybody want to invade Russia? And that's where 96% of these weapons exist. So we need to demand of our political leaders to let us talk to each other. I just thought of something. Massive communications and student exchanges between our great universities all around the world. Imagine if we had every week a big Zoom meeting of kids from the University of Moscow and 5 or 6 of our universities here, and they just talk to each other and realize, my goodness, the demonization of the other. Pakistan and India used to be one country. 70% of the malnourished children in the world are in India and Pakistan. 30% of the children in both countries are malnourished. For them, they've already lost the war. Their lives are enormously crippled. Their development of their bodies and their brains. And yet, these two countries are in a nuclear arms race. And if they use them, here I am in the suburbs of New York City, the soot that would go into the stratosphere would come over my head, and the crops in South Jersey, where I get my vegetables, would be destroyed. So my security is dependent on somebody at a computer in Lahore, Pakistan, monitoring what India is doing. But India and Pakistan cannot solve the problem between each other on nuclear weapons, because India did not get the weapon because of Pakistan. India got the weapon because of China. Pakistan got the weapon because of India. And India can't solve the problem with China because China didn't get the weapon because of India. China got the weapon because of the Soviet Union and Russia. And China and Russia can't solve the problem because Russia got the weapon because of the United States. So the only way to solve the problem in South Asia is global, because it's a global problem, which means that we have to demand of our political leaders that they start acting to each other. That's what young people have to do, is demand. I don't know what your heritage is, but I know, and I don't know you very well, but I know that you would feel comfortable in Nanking, China, in Moscow, in Paris, in London, and Rio. You'd find young people with a similar sense that you have of a positive attitude toward people in other cultures. This is the generation that you're part of. At the same time, in each of these places, feeling victimized, not feeling that modernity is serving them well, and they're angry, and they're looking for identity, and we've just seen them, try and take over the capital of the United States, and we've seen them bring into office Neanderthal thinkers in Brazil, in the Philippines, in South Africa. They're angry, and we have to find a way of serving their needs also. Those are the challenges that I think young people have. Interesting.
Absolutely.
But these are challenges
It's an
that
uphill climb.
You know better than me. You know better than me.
I do, and I also feel, well, I can't say if I know them better than you, Mr. Granoff, but I want to inject a note of hope, I think, because a lot of the programs that I've been a part of, I had the good fortune of being part of the Obama Foundation Scholars Program last year, and just as you said, these were young folks from all over the world. There were, more than 20 countries represented in one classroom, and I think the one thing that we all were able to do just on our own small level was build that hope together, and and break down some of those barriers between self and other, and then really recognize ourselves as we looked at someone who came from a country on the other side of the world, and realize that we're all just human. We have similar challenges and similar opportunities, going forward. And the security issue, and just as you said, this concept of human security is something that we all share. We're all equally vulnerable to some of these threats, and then that's really where we might find room for collaboration and for coming together and building this sense of community across all of these perceived differences. And I think that's but of course, this is a time to hear from you, so I could go on about that for a while. But thank you for raising these very crucial points. And yeah.
So the next one of these, I'm going to interview you.
Oh, that would be, I only have a few more questions, and I almost, I don't want this to come to a close, because I'm writing down some of the things that you're saying, and it's just such a rich exchange. But thank you. And I think, this comes to a slightly more personal question that I kind of had in mind, as I was thinking about some of the things that we could talk about today. And I just wonder, as we talk about the youth, and as we talk about a lot of young people sort of starting out on this journey of coming together against these existential threats, as you started out on your journey, Mr. Granoff, how did you? Was there maybe one thing that you wish that you'd known when you were starting out that you could share with us today, just to equip us with that knowledge in hindsight or in retrospect? Was there anything like that?
Well, I'll say a couple of things, because there's no one thing. And I'll use examples. How much time do I have to do this?
We can we usually end around this time, but if you're comfortable and you have time, and I would love to hear more.
Okay, I'll just give a few examples. Okay.
Please.
So I was interning in Washington in the 1960s, and I was interning for a congressman in the Capitol. And there was a senator from New York named Robert Kennedy. He was John F. Kennedy's brother. And he was the senator from New York. And he took a bunch of us interns out for lunch one day. And he told us what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So what happened was the Soviet Union was deploying nuclear missiles in Cuba. And the CIA saw they were doing this and told President Kennedy, and then he demanded that they remove them. They wouldn't remove them, so we created an embargo, all premised on the belief that these weapons were not operational. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the military of the United States, wanted to invade. Had we invaded Cuba, the fact is that there were dozens of weapons that were fully operational, and they would have used them. And you and I wouldn't be here today. We came this close. Many instances in which we've come this close, but I had never spoken with somebody who was who dealt with the very process of turning that around. And at the time, they didn't even know that they were fully operational. And he talked about how it was truly good luck that saved the world. And he said to us that if we get every other issue right and miss this, and that nuclear weapons present the practical and moral litmus test of modern humanity. And so that stayed with me. And I really couldn't do anything about it until I developed skills that would be commensurate with the challenge. So I really didn't get involved in the cause of it until after I became a lawyer, and I had some skills that could be used in this. So the first thing that or nurse education, develop competencies, excellence, and engage in pursuing excellence not only in the skill that you're learning, but in the pursuit of personal excellence. I didn't understand the value of developing character in the period of my lifetime when that was so important. And thus, when I did develop the skills, then the opportunity the universe presented for me to become an advocate at a fairly high level kind of came to me by other people identifying my skills and asking me to join them, elders to me who were more skilled, in the way that people will come to you and say, oh, you have skills, I want to join us. So that was very important. I didn't understand that I was learning. While I was practicing commercial law, I was learning skills of advocacy and understanding, and analytic skills were great value. Now, you can learn different skills in different professions, in different endeavors that have great value. But to pursue excellence, that's the first important point. And I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand that that's a holistic approach that involves character and values. Another thing that I learned was I met a saint from Sri Lanka who had been found in the jungles of Sri Lanka, which is almost a name, and who treated all lives as part of his own life and loved everyone as part of himself, and exuded a level of joy and freedom and wonder and openness that I'd only seen in infants, but with the maturity of a person well over 100 years old. And I had the opportunity of living with this elder wise man for months at a time. And my sense of what is really valuable in this journey of human life was transformed by meeting somebody who had no attachment, who was an elder. And by elder, I mean someone who is no longer trying to acquire anything for themselves and only is being in the world to serve others. So I sort of myself to an elder to learn. And to this day, he's passed on, but I still keep elders in my life as mentors. And by elders, I mean people who don't want anything from me other than I should become a better human being. I seek out such people and I listen to them. I don't listen to everybody the same way. I listen to them because I believe that wisdom matters. So I didn't know that when I was your age. Now I'm in my 70s and I seek out elders. I seek out people who can be elders to me. That I didn't know was that our deepest intentions actually that we can have intentions that are based on the part of us that's temporal, our physical wants, needs, our emotional wants and needs, which are always selfish. But we also have the capacity of finding great joy in something that is selfless, like love, generosity, compassion, which is to feel the suffering of others. And that compassion is a good example, that if you cultivate compassion, that the other side of feeling the suffering of others is you feel the joy of others, so that you're motivated in your interpersonal relations to help the other person so that you can feel their joy. If you tell people, seek the joy of others as your own, they will forget about the suffering. It's got to be holistic. You've got to feel the unity with other lives. Well, that point has been, for me, the most important point in an institution that I didn't understand when I was your age, which is marriage. So I've been married to a wonderful woman for over 44 years. And our love and connectivity has evolved over that time because we understand the value of sacrifice, of giving to the other. And that has allowed me to raise 3 amazing young men, our 3 sons, and has allowed me to understand the principle of pursuing and intending to pursue compassion as an important value. And last but not least, courage. It's not something that you learn, that they teach you very much in our institutions. There's 2 qualities they don't teach you. They don't teach you humility in any of our elite schools and things, or anywhere. I mean, humility is just not a value that people, but humility is really important because it frees you from arrogance, and arrogance is a terrible burden. And courage to stand up to what appears to be immovable, but nothing is. And we don't learn courage. The courage just comes from a knowledge in the heart. And so how do you pursue courage? Try and find people who have courage and be with them. And it spreads. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't even think of humility when I was young. I didn't see any value in it. I didn't understand why people said you should learn to be humble. Why? I don't see that. How does that lead to success? So when the help you to clearly, if your heart is clear, you can tell when people are lying. You can tell when people are insecure. You can tell when others are suffering. If you're suffering and you're insecure, you can't read the world very clearly. Your mirror is distorted. So the most important thing is clearing your own perception. And last but not least, people usually tell you what they're really about. Donald Trump told everybody what he was about early on. You know, people tell you. And when I used to try cases, I tried a lot of cases as a lawyer. I would, inside myself, demand of witnesses to tell the truth. And I actually had the president judge of the trial courts of Philadelphia call me into chambers one day and ask me how I got witnesses to do that, to own up. And I tried to explain to him that it was an internal thing, but I did the normal skills of a trial attorney. But the secret sauce was something that was going on inside. So, last but not least, the most important work you have is the work inside oneself. If you neglect cleaning your own house inside, then you'll never have the best pillow to put your head on, which is a clear conscience, because you'll keep getting yourself involved in patterns of suffering. Now, these same principles apply politically. So Mahatma Gandhi and Jesus said, in different ways, Mahatma Gandhi said it politically this way: for a policy, think of the most disenfranchised person that you know, the poorest, most weak, neglected victim. And think, does this policy help or burden them? Nuclear weapons clearly is a theft from those who are hungry, a theft from those who don't have adequate education and opportunity. Jesus said, I was naked, did you clothe me? I was hungry, did you feed me? It's the same principle, to look at the most vulnerable and see, does this help them? And so these principles apply not only to personal, but to institutions as well. So I didn't know any of these things in any coherent way when I was your age. But now I see that these are perennial truths that wise people have been saying as far back as we have written records of what wise people do and say. And I've seen now the people who follow these kinds of principles, who are my peers in age and experience, who didn't follow them, how awfully burdened and confused they are. And how the people that have followed them, how just how much happier they are.
Thank you. That's there's just a lot to think about in there, and as you said, I feel like there's nuclear weapons, just to tie together, some of the very rich lessons that you're leaving us with today. I think nuclear weapons call upon us to search within ourselves for some of these truths, for the courage and the moral and the character and the moral courage to I think first believe in that an alternative is possible, and then to take the appropriate actions and the steps towards achieving that. So
history never stands still. The history never stands still. So we will go in the direction of our intentions. For the intention to create positive change has to be front and center. And the method through which we create the change has to be consistent with the change we want to see. So as Gandhi said, be the peace that you want to see. Be the change you want to see. Peace activists, you can only bring into the world what you have within yourself. If you don't have peace in yourself, you'll never help bring peace in the world. So operating in anger and fear and those qualities, that doesn't work. So we're at a moment in history that is going to affect humanity for generations to come, unlike ever before. We have seen how fragile a free society is. We almost lost it a few weeks ago. And we're still in a battle for the soul of the United States. But this battle of primitivism and tribalism and violence and authoritarian, one man becoming a slave to another, this pursuit of domination, this is happening all over. Why? That's a different discussion. But what's more important, that you've given me the opportunity, what are the tools that we need to nurture, to bring into flourishing a planet in which the tools of science and technology are used for flourishing rather than destruction? That's what's before us. But the first tool is ourselves.
Absolutely.
The first tool is ourselves, and that's not talked about. How do we make our good? And it's not, and the good is not something that you own. The good owns us. The good created our lives. We didn't create our lives. We didn't create life. We don't own it. It owns us.
Absolutely. And I could go on and ask, there's just questions upon questions, Mr. Granoff, and I think every moment of what you've shared has been so rich and so meaningful and sort of, plants the seeds for more thought and more, introspection. And as you talk about the soul of the United States, I would just say the soul of the world, and which brings us back to the issue that we are so concerned about in this moment. So I guess as we conclude, could we ask you to leave us with an intention or a prayer or a hope moving forward?
Let me say that just speaking to you, I don't know how many other people are listening to this, but just speaking to you is enormously fulfilling for me. Because
thank you for the opportunity.
The questing for truth, and that's what you're probing. What's true here? What's authentic? That is not something that you can get a desire for on your own. The great Sufi mystic Jalaluddin Rumi, who's, by the way, the most popular poet in the United States and Turkey and Iran, said the evidence of your prayers being answered is the increased desire to pursue truth. The increased desire to pursue the good. That doesn't. You can't will yourself into that. You can't will yourself to get beyond insecurity of, do people like me? Am I accepted? Does he love me? Does she love me? Did I dress correct? Will I get this job? You can't will yourself to get out of those concerns into the larger concern of, my goodness, I could die tomorrow, and who am I? That understanding of what's really important, of who am I, where do they come from, and that's something that's a gift. And to find someone like yourself who is questing and digging and enjoys it. Oh my goodness. That's a treasure of enormous proportions. And I have faith that the same power that gifts enough people with the desire to improve themselves and understand that they cannot improve themselves without improving others, who understand that to love others as one loves oneself, that we are interconnected, that there's an internet, not just the internet, there's an internet of life. That people who feel that in their hearts are called to develop the skills to bring that calling into action. That we need to go from the journey from the head to the heart to the hand. The head can tell us our life has a termination and our choices make a difference. And then the heart can tell us what our potential is as humans. But don't bring it into action, what we've learned in the heart will wither. So our actions need to reinforce the goodness within ourselves. And I have observed that there is the quest to accomplish this that is infused in the human community by a power that is mysterious and very real. It's as real as the first time you fall in love. How did that happen? Where did that come from? So my prayer is that people listening will fall in love with the source of their own love and want to nurture that in their actions. And anyone who comes to that conclusion will certainly work to get rid of nuclear weapons, but will do a lot more, build the fabric of communities and families and personal relationships in which their own humanity and the humanity of others can flourish. That's my hope. And my faith.
Amen. Amen to that.
And next time we can just talk about treaties and law.
Yeah. There's so much to learn on that I think for me and for so many of us who are listening. So
well,
thank you
we did a Global Security Institute. We did a session on international law and nuclear weapons. So go to gsinstitute.org, and you can learn a whole lot about this sort of thing. And go to the website of the Nobel Peace Laureate Summits and hear the voices of these very wise people. And I'm a fellow in the World Academy of Arts and Sciences. Go to their website, the World Academy of Arts and Sciences. These are places, and of course, the Voices for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World that you and I are part of. The information that's needed to advance this cause of the security of a nuclear weapons-free world, it's there. And it's in those places that'll open up a whole doorway to you. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Granoff. Thank you.